Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football, and proudly sponsored by Starner Apparel. My name's Euan and today I'm joined by Angus as always. Let's just cut to the chase. Shit weekend of football, eh?
Oh dear. In terms of, the men's teams that we both kind of follow, Ewan, can't really think of many worse ones in all honesty, but other than that, pretty decent weekend, getting up to, some other stuff in that as well. But yeah, in the football aspect, I'm pretty happy to, get this recorded and never think of this weekend ever again. I hope you're thinking that you'll be in a similar vein, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Obviously, our men's team performance wasn't the best, which we'll come on to talk about. As always, we'll still talk about the games when we lose them as well. And then English team that I kind of keep an eye on is Man United, and they certainly got humbled at the weekend, and our women's team dropping a couple of points as well. So all in, not great. But as always, you can find this episode as well as all our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick things off by discussing our game with Hibs as the Lions were comfortably beaten by the visitors in West Lothian.
Next up, Angus took in our women's top of the table clash away at Renfrew as the ladies were forced to settle for a point in the end.
And finally, Euan caught up with Dundee United fan Andy Winton to discuss their season ahead of their visit to West Lothian. Hibs made the short trip to West Lothian as the Lions looked to get back to winning ways. Despite taking the lead through Joel Newbley, the Lions fell to their heaviest home defeat since August 2020 as it finished 4-1. Euan, just seemed as if everything that could possibly go wrong, bar that Joel Newbley strike, did go wrong, right?
Pretty much, yeah. You mentioned their heaviest home defeat since August 2020, thoroughly enough, same opposition against Hibs right at the start of the COVID season. I think Kevin Nisbet got a hat-trick that day. Dykes got our goal, but it all looked so rosy first 10 minutes, didn't it? Yeah. Our goal, great ball by Morgan Boys. I'm sure on punditry it would probably got described as a big hoof up the park, but it was actually a fantastic pass by Morgan Boys. Joel's taking it down really well. He's created an angle to get the shot away, and it's a phenomenal finish in at the near post off the underside of the crossbar, and you're thinking, right, we're onto something here. The thing that makes the game, I think we were decent first 20, 25 minutes of the game, but I felt the game was a bit too open for my liking. Against the Hibs team that are full of confidence just now, they're on a good run of results, and I just felt that the game was a bit too open, and there was chances, but there was chances there for both teams, I think, at this point. And we got a little warning shot. Euan Henderson had an effort which clipped the top of the bar. But the defending for the goals, it's the first goal, it's so basic, which makes it more frustrating. I think there's a couple of elements of it. Jason Holt, I think, can maybe cut out the initial ball, get his head on it and deflect it forwards so that it's not going through and over the top of our back four. Nicky Devlin's tried to play offside when he's goal side. And I'd fancy Nicky in a foot race to keep up with Euan and potentially deal with that situation. So, when we've done that, Euan's got in, he's rolled it past Shamal George, and having seen it back, he's clearly onside in the end, and they've got the equaliser. And from the equaliser onwards, Hibs were by far and away the better side in that game. They managed to get the second goal. Again, it's just too easy. It's really passive from us, and it's very unlike us. The 1-2 between Hop and Euan, Fitzwater's, for me, far too passive in terms of putting a bit of pressure on Hop on the edge of the box. And the finish, it's one of those ones that there's a bit of criticism I've seen online for Shamal George for the second goal in terms of his feet, but sometimes see when players scuff it the way Euan has, it actually causes the keeper more problems because they're expecting the strike to come in clean most of the time, but it's trickled in at the far post, and Hibs go in at the break 2-1 up. We had a couple of sniffs here or there. Nicky Devlin had a kind of half volley from the edge of the box, which he's pulled wide. But again, it was that I thought we offered a lot of space in behind, which isn't, again, particularly like us. And Hibs didn't have to do anything for me that was incredibly creative to open us up. They were a bit more direct, and they caused us problems on countless occasions by doing that. Hop had a 1v1, which Shamal George has made a very good save from. And then again, it's a ball over the top, and Hop's managed to get Jack Fitzwater sent off. I feel for Fitzy because it's very minimal contact, but he has clipped him. And I think the fact that Fitzy is just walking down the tunnel, essentially, just head straight off the pitch, would suggest that he knew that he'd made a bit of contact. On first viewing, I thought Morgan Boys might have been able to get across, but when I've seen replays of it over the weekend, it is a red card. For me, there's not a lot of debate in that. Again, we're down to 10 men at this point, chasing the game, and we looked vulnerable at our own set plays in terms of pushing players forward, and especially when we're down to 10 men. That third goal, we were just wide open, I thought. Wide open for the counter-attack. Euan's played Chris Cadden through, and you're pretty unlucky in that situation where it's a pass that he's trying to play back across goal, and it's taken a nick off Omiyonga and wrong-footed Shamal George. You're 3-1 down at this point. You then have Omiyonga having to come off, going down to 9 men. And yeah, it's just, as you say, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in the game in the end. And the fourth goal, Luigi De Lucas had come on at this point at centre-half for Obalai, who had come on and then had to go off injured. He's hooked the ball up in there. Nisbet's forced a save from Shamal George. Suspected broken thumb from what Davey was saying in the build-up to this goal. And Kukurevich has followed it in and slotted it into the back of the net, and it's 4-1. And then just to compound the misery, Davy Martindale's red card at full time for what I think was a bit of tongue-in-cheek banter between him and David Marshall. Whether that would get appealed or not, I don't know. But he's ended up sticking the middle finger up to David Marshall to indicate how many minutes are left in the game. And Davy's been sent off as well. So it's, to put it bluntly, from kick-off up until the Hibs equaliser, I thought we were well in the game. But it's a capitulation from the equaliser onwards. And it's something we need to rectify sooner rather than later. I'm not going to turn around and say we're out the top 6 mix. We're definitely not. We're still well in amongst it. But we need to address this run of form. I listened to Davy's comments after the game, and he even said that himself. The last few performances haven't been good enough, and Davy's very honest in his assessment of games, and I tend to agree vast majority of the time with what he says, and this definitely goes into that bracket that the performance wasn't good enough. And it frustrates me because I think Hibs looked hungrier, they looked more aggressive off the ball than we did at times. I said that last week at Aberdeen as well. I thought Aberdeen did the ugly side of the game better. The likes of Egan Riley and Jago in the middle of the park kind of set that tone, I feel, for Hibs in terms of being aggressive off the ball. And it's a performance I'd like to forget as soon as possible, to put it bluntly to you, Angus.
I think just to start things off, I think in Scottish football, in our league in general, not enough credit is given to teams when they come and produce like the goods so well. And I think that Hibs deserve, straight off the bat, I think Hibs deserve a great amount of credit for the way that they played on Saturday. I think we've had it countless times on here where we've came on and said, we're playing Hibs, we know what to expect. If we get at them, we should be able to, to cause them some issues and all that. This is probably one of the few times that I've ever seen them play and been like, they aren't soft at all. They have had that wee bit of dig within them. And I think something as well that, I think they're one of those kind of teams who's kind of always going on about like the Hibs way. They didn't play the Hibs way, whatever that, like that kind of nice, fancy kind of football. They went kind of direct in that, but it was working. And in football, you should absolutely always do what is working and is causing other teams issues. And they found so much joy from, the pace getting in behind the run, like the tireless running from that front line. And it worked them an absolute treat. And, if you're looking at like what how their fans are, buzzing after that result, then they should be taking that forever to kind of next games, kind of shaping up like that. And yeah, I think they deserve massive credit for that as well. Egan Riley and Diego in the middle of the park as well, absolutely brilliant in terms of, doing what we usually do in all honesty. And I think that is probably what makes the game a bit more harder to kind of take, as well as the fact that, we've been lacking that for the last, 3-4 weeks or whatever, how long it's been now. It's just been absolutely poor. And we're miles off it at this instance. Yeah, good enough start, but you obviously made the point about all the spacing behind. How many times did that happen? I could probably think of 5 occasions on like right now. There may have been more that maybe didn't turn out to actual chances, but there's at least 5 that ended up in 2 ended up in goals, 1 ended up in a red card, and it's like, and then 1 very much should have been scored as well. Yeah, it was awful, absolutely awful, and I don't know what's kind of happened. I don't know if, obviously, when Marvin Bartley was in the dugout as the assistant manager, he was, one of the defensive coaches. Is that maybe what's happened? Is the rejig from him departing, the focus that is now being placed on the defensive side of things, maybe not to the same standard? Maybe that's like a compliment to Bartley as to how good of a coach he was and, kind of setting things up. But it just seems to be those kind of basic stuff. And I think as well, Euan, speaking to Chris, who I sit next to the games, who plays for the GS and all that, we're kind of talking about this, and it's like throughout most of the kind of the Premiership seasons, you could say what Livi's style of play was. You could say it was a bit direct, you could say it was in your face and anything like that. Style of play right now, I think, can only be described as hopeful that something's going to fall to us. And I think even more so now, you look at some of the defensive actions there. I'm going to hope it's offside. I'm going to hope that, this breaks. I'm going to hope Jamal bails us out. That many times that a team should be breaking on us is ridiculous. If we want to be in the top 6, we cannot defend like that. That's not taking it into our own hands in the slightest. And, hopefully that is, a massive wake-up call, because that is really, really poor.
Yeah, as you say, it's the manner of how we're defending just now that's frustrating me. If you look back to the start of the season, we were very solid, weren't giving up a lot of goals. I saw Callum Carson put up a very interesting stat with regards to Jamal George. He's conceded less than a goal a game when we've had 11 men finish up in the park, but let's just say the figure's a lot higher when we've gone down to 10 men, which you kind of half would expect, but it's quite an alarming figure. And I absolutely get when you go down to 10 men, games become more difficult. You're obviously there's going to be spaces that open up in the game, but this season in particular, we've just capitulated anytime we've gone down to 10 men and been on the end of absolute hidings. And that's quite frustrating. I'll use as an example a game last season when we played Dundee United at home, and it was 1-1 at half-time. Ben Williamson got sent off just before half-time. And see the fight and desire we showed in that second half to keep ourselves in the game, and we managed to come away with a point. I'll use the St Mirren game earlier this season as well, at home when we went down to 10 men. When Scott Pittman got sent off, again, we showed a fight, a hunger, a desire to stay in the game, win your individual battles across the park, show that aggressive side of the game and be compact and difficult to beat. I felt it was just easy for Hibs to go and make that margin of victory a lot easier on Saturday. And look, we sit and praise the team week in, week out and defend the team, but that performance it wasn't up to the standards which we have set at points during this season. I don't want to harp on about it, but the contrast compared to that Kilmarnock performance at home is alarming. It's alarming, the difference in the last few performances. I defended the team last week. I thought they probably would have merited a point at least. I defended the team against Rangers as well because I thought there was elements of our performance which were pretty decent, but that one on Saturday, that was poor. And look, who am I to tell professional footballers how you should be playing the game? Look, I'm just a fan at the end of the day, but I know the players will know that wasn't good enough. I know the manager will know that wasn't good enough, and I trust that they will get it right. But we need to get it right sooner rather than later, because we're now coming into a run of fixtures. You mentioned it on last week's podcast. You've got the 3 games with Celtic, 3 games with Rangers, 3 games with Aberdeen, 3 games with Hibs, 3 games with Hearts out the way now. You've probably got all the games on paper that you would want heading into a run-in when it comes into the split. We need to start picking up points. And Wednesday night, if that game goes ahead, God forbid that the game gets called off again against Dundee United at home on the artificial surface, but it starts there. We need to start picking up results, and these games have got more difficult now in this run-in as well. Dundee United have just changed their manager. You'd expect them to have maybe a little bit of a bounce. Ross County have started picking up a few more results in recent weeks. Even look at Motherwell. Motherwell have changed their manager and got an immediate bounce off that. So a lot of these games coming up, they're now even more difficult than they already would have been. And we need to start performing to the standards that we know we can. I'll put out a hypothetical point for you, Angus. Davey spoke during the week about players being out of contract come the end of the season. And there's, a few deals were triggered. I think, Morgan Boys signed an extension. I think he mentioned about Iobelai, Joe Newbley. There was Christian Montano as well, have triggered probably an extension on their deal. But he kind of mentioned players who are unlikely to be at the football club. As a fan, I appreciate Davey's honesty and I like Davey's honesty, but for some fans, do you think that plants a seed in fans' heads as to why performances have maybe dipped?
Probably, yeah. I think football fans can easily quite look for a finger to point to, and if there is a circumstance that's surrounding somebody, then it may be something that's kind of thrown up in the air. And saying that, with Fitzwater, I think is like probably the one that we all know is probably going to be departing. I wouldn't say he's probably the main culprit of this. I don't think you could accuse him of what people would say is, running down the contract or whatever like that. I do think that, sure, on Saturday there, for the second goal, maybe a little bit complacent or, not up to the usual kind of standard. But I think that kind of is running through the whole team right now. The sending off as well, like there's not really an awful lot he can do. I think he's probably expecting the back line to be a wee bit further back as well, especially because Sporting centre half. But yeah, I hope that that's not something that comes too much into like the discourse within like the rounded club on the football in the forum and stuff like that. People, digging players out or anything like that because of certain kind of like situations and whatnot. Because we've had plenty of players who we've known are going to be leaving. I mean, look at like Alan Forrest last season. We knew from January essentially he was going. Probably was a surprise that he was still at the club, out with of January. Still continued to play tremendously well until the final day. The likes of your Halkits, your Gallagher's, Liam Kelly, stuff like that. It's an easy one to kind of point towards because of like, the poor results and all of that. If that is the case, then, I think maybe the main thing we can do is maybe a wee rejig of the team, to maybe give some other players a wee bit of a chance. But that also just comes down more to, a lack of form for most of these players. I think there's a lot of them you could probably say, if they had a wee spell out of the side, can't really complain too much about it, in all honesty. I think the issue is that there's a couple in kind of positions we don't have too much depth in that kind of capacity. But yeah, we've just got to hope that, it is just this little blip and, we get over it. We're playing 12th place team on Wednesday. That has to be the prime time for, for our reaction, for us to, to show what we're really about. If we're not going to do it at home against statistically the worst team in the league, then when essentially is it going to happen?
Yeah, I just want to be very clear. I'm purely putting that out as as a talking point. I've seen some fans talk about it online. Personal opinion on it is, player that I love to bits is Nicky Devlin. We've sponsored him for the last few years. Nicky wears his heart in his sleeve for me, and I would not expect somebody like him to be down in tools. So it's, to be very clear, I don't think the players are doing that. I just think they're going through a bad patch of form, but it's something that fans will automatically look for. They'll try and read between the lines as to why the form's dipped. And I don't believe that's the case, but the only way the players are going to prove some of the fans wrong in that regard is to start pulling out some results and some performances to match with it. And as you said, we've got a very big game on, touch wood, it does go ahead.
Obviously, I live like much closer to the stadium than you right now, and it's actually quite nice. It's like really, it's quite sunny right now. I think it is only about 5 or 6 degrees or something, not like roasting or anything, but it's actually a really, really quite nice day. And to think that there's maybe going to be an issue of a game being called off like 48 hours from now is really, really funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, just having a glance at the forecast, Angus, it's meant to reach -5 at some point on Wednesday and later this week. Even if they were to try and go again on Saturday, which is Scottish Cup weekend, I think it's to reach -7 in Livingston. So I think the club have put down covers on certain areas of the pitch. I was told after the game on Saturday, so they've obviously taken precautions to try and ensure that the game does go ahead on Wednesday. But as you said, it's a great opportunity on Wednesday night to try and rectify the performances in previous weeks. But that game's just become more difficult. I think you could see from Dundee United's performance against Aberdeen at the weekend, they got a bit of a reaction from Jim Goodwin coming in. I think Aberdeen actually went ahead very much against the run of play in that game, going by what I heard. So he's obviously got a little bit of a reaction there, and he'll be looking at our form in recent weeks and fancy their chances of coming to Livingston and picking up a result, which they need as well. So that game's become very difficult. But yeah, we always kind of reverting back to the game on Saturday, we always talk about how Hibs have that soft centre. We're a team that suit playing Hibs because we tend to be very aggressive. That's probably the biggest disappointment from Saturday, isn't it? That we almost got out the qualities that we've possessed over recent seasons. We got outdone by Hibs.
Yeah, 100%. And it's been the same since the Inverness game. I think that you could even look at that one and say, how our championship teams came up and they've got more hunger. There was talk in the build-up of that Scottish Cup game about, how big an opportunity it was for us, and we just let it go past us. We weren't up for it at all. You'd be thinking like, all right, cool, we can't get complacent. And then, the standards haven't really kind of picked up from there either. Sure, we've played some decent teams since then, Rangers, Aberdeen and Hibs, I guess like in the usual kind of way, you wouldn't expect Livy to be picking up any points there. But I think, as you're saying, we'd expect it to at least be competitive in a way and, be having chances to maybe in the Aberdeen and Hibs game in particular, having those chances that you could maybe, sneak something or that. But honestly, can't say that we've deserved anything in the last kind of couple of weeks. But to get back the team, hopefully, just a little blip, and this Wednesday, massive. But yeah, hopefully we get a good turnout, and back to the players, and get them back to winning ways, and a good 3 points, and justice for Liam Fox as well.
Yes, I still love Liam Fox. He'll always be a club legend in my eyes. So yeah, justice for Foxy, and get 3 points. Talking about that Dundee United game, obviously I caught up with Andy Winton with regards to it, but we've potentially got a bit of a selection headache all of a sudden. Shamal George, suspected broken thumb, whether that's been confirmed or not as of yet. Ayo Obalai came off injured. Stefan Omiyonga came off injured. Sean Kelly wasn't on the bench at the weekend there. You've got Jack Fitzwater, who's going to be suspended now. We're all of a sudden going back to what we had in January and looking a bit threadbare in certain areas, aren't we? Yeah,
definitely. So I think I've even seen a couple of people, well, I think even just in the GS like chat, they were saying like, does that mean like if George is injured, do we need to get like an emergency goalkeeper to come in just as like a replacement?
We don't need an emergency goalkeeper. We have a man. We have a man that will answer the call.
Again.
Put up the Mali signal.
Aye, you go into the centre back, and you've probably got your starting pair for the past 2 seasons, both unavailable, a suspension and an injury. Probably going to have to, and then Sean Kelly, of course, was out as well. He wasn't in the squad either. So you're probably talking about, three of the four first choices. Well, three of the four main choices that have been for the past 2 seasons suddenly not there. Luigi De Lucas is probably going to have to step in for his full debut. And, I guess that gives us a chance to see what he can offer as well. But yeah, I think, to be fair, maybe we need a wee bit of freshness. Maybe we need a bit of a shuffle, and maybe not even just centre back, but maybe all around the pitch there could be, some room for other players to kind of, to come in or whatnot. I've obviously spoken, at great length since I've been a part of this podcast that my preference is, when we're playing with wingers, to actually have wingers out there. Maybe somebody like a Baham Bula, who, if you give him the ball, he maybe run at somebody, maybe try and create something himself, could be something that could be very good for us. I think we've been lacking something entirely. He's somebody who'll look for the ball at his feet and maybe run with it. Sure, we know that what kind of player he is, it's not going to come off every time, but I'd at least rather see something like that than, the same, hopeful kind of long ball that we've kind of tried to do. Maybe it opens up a couple more spaces for like Anderson or that as well. Midfield as well. Shinnie's kind of dropped out of the team for a little bit. I think, going back to, that run in January, I thought he was pretty decent. Perhaps maybe somebody like him could come in, to kind of like freshen things up in there as well. Who knows? Maybe that wee rejig could maybe do the best for us. Maybe it's a kick up the backside that some of them need to know that, if you're getting comfortable thinking that you've got a spot in the team, well, maybe it's not quite like that.
We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Sterner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
Our women's side travelled to Renfrew for another top-of-the-table clash on Sunday. A Beth Mackay goal had the Lionesses leading at the break, but they were made to settle for a point in the end. Angus, first of all, a couple of changes to the starting 11. We mentioned last week about how we thought Gemma Mason and Raywin Murphy made a big impact on the game coming off the bench. They were brought into the starting 11. What was your kind of first thoughts on that?
That also brought like a bit of a change of shape. They started off with like a kind of like a 4 at the back, 4-2-3-1, or like a 4-3-3 kind of way. But I think for the nature of the game that ended up becoming, it was very much necessary. This, obviously, we played Renfrew, a couple of weeks ago, the 10-1, which was, probably an anomaly in most ways. This is probably much more of what you'd expect a game between these two to be. Very 50-50, very feisty, very much a battle between the two sides. Not an awful lot of, kind of quality, on the ball, but, a very evenly contested game, and both teams, trying to one up the other. And I think it essentially came to, if anybody was kind of going to be off their day in terms of that fighting spirit, then that was going to give the advantage. And I think because of that, it was quite evenly matched. So with that point, I guess that having, like Raywin and Gemma in there was, a good thing to have, as, they were very much getting stuck into tackles and everything like that. I think that's probably the thing from last week. I would say was maybe a wee bit more was better than last week. I think last week we were a wee bit standoffish at times, and as well as not showing much of the quality on the ball. I think this week it was much different, where we're kind of getting into their faces. We're trying to force them into issues and stuff like that, force them into pressure, and it's just a proper genuine battling performance. I think that's one of the things that has been a key theme this season in terms of grinding out results. And I think that's very much the case here. And I think that's somewhat a positive way for, the kind of team to take from this game. Probably didn't play too well, in all honesty, in terms of like keeping the ball and creating too many chances. But I think that spirit was there, and the way that the team fought for each other, was good to see. And because of that, I think it was a much improvement over last week.
Yeah, as you say, there was I listened to Conor McCloskey's comments on the game, and very much kind of echoes what you said. There wasn't a lot of football broke out at times. It was very much a kind of battle on the pitch, but we did take the lead. It was Beth Mackay who got her 4th goal of the season since joining just a couple of months back. She's certainly added a little bit of quality to the side, hasn't she?
Yeah, good offer on the left hand side. I think for the past 2 seasons, I think you could probably count the amount of left-footed players the club's had on one hand, and probably still have at least 4 fingers available. So I think even just in that aspect, it's just good to see somebody who's natural on that side. If the ball comes to them, the first thought is to use that foot. Good forward runs, and that I think maybe at times just need a wee bit more of that. Kind of looking into the spaces and kind of driving forward into there. That's essentially how we end up getting the goal. I think we end up winning the ball back, and Raywin spots Beth, who makes a great run into the box away from her marker, slots in, beats the goalkeeper from quite a close, within the box. And yeah, I think that's what you're kind of like looking for, that kind of intelligent run to make that kind of dart into. And whenever Raywin picks her out with the ball, she's just got all the time in the world to kind of like slot it under. But yeah, decent enough kind of showing from her. I do think that actually, I think she came off. They brought on Jen, and I think they reverted back to the kind of the 3-5-2, and I think it maybe took us maybe a couple of minutes to kind of think of that and be aware that we've now switched the formation. These are the areas now that each of us all have to be kind of covering, and essentially they break from that. They get in behind the back line, cut the ball back, and there's 2 people waiting at the back post to tap it into the back of the net. And I think that, I don't know, maybe that little tweak, the message maybe didn't get across quite as quick, or some people were still in the mindsets of either they were covering different areas or anything like that. And I think that we've been caught out quite unfortunately, because to be honest, other than that, I think Renfrew only created one kind of other big chance. Charlotte Ferguson made an absolutely tremendous save to keep us 1-0 up, but they would eventually get that goal. And I think you probably can't say that either team really deserved to win the game. I think they're probably deserving of a single point, although not too much was created in terms of chances. I think for us as well, we started kind of relying on, maybe a little bit similar to last week, relying on like a set piece is going to get us back into it. And it almost very much did in the last minute. I think, we had a header cleared off the line and it fell to Shannon Mulligan, who, hit over from quite close range. And, if you put that one away, it's an absolute sucker punch for Renfrew, and, put us, 16 points clear at the top of the league as well, which would be absolutely massive. But in the end, draw is probably a fair result. I would say that there is, improvement upon last week. I think that the performance last week, we were very much bailed out due to 2 set pieces. I think this week, we definitely showed a little bit more against better opposition as well. I say that, but I think I'm still pretty adamant that Dryborough last week were one of the best teams I've seen in terms of like that kind of like athletic kind of nature in that as well. Yeah, it was just a completely different game, this one. It was just much more of a battle, and not one that we shirked from as well.
Yeah, we spoke about it a lot on the podcast this season about the battling qualities the team's shown throughout the season, and it's more often than not in this current campaign that's what's got them over the line or got them points in the end. So it was good to see that they showed those battling qualities once again, and as you say, against better opposition. I think that 10-1 performance, as good as it was from ourselves on the day, I think I listened to a couple of the girls' comments talking about it. It was probably a bit of an off day for Renfrew as well in a regard, and however, as good as we were, so they were fully expecting a closer affair in this game, especially going away to Renfrew, and that's exactly what they got in the end. But certainly from listening to what you've said, Angus, and listening to Conor's comments after the game, it seems like a point was a pretty fair result, but keeps that gap at 13 points, and they're still sitting proudly at the top of the league, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. And I think in all honesty, if Renfrew were going to, claw back the deficit of points, they'd probably be looking at their home games against us as must wins. Throwing that pressure as well of, the way that they got turned over, they would have been fully up for it and fully firing to make sure that, they didn't get turned over so convincingly. Yeah, again. So I think they would have came into it, with probably a bit more pressure and, a lot more to kind of prove than we did. And I think, that we handled that pretty well and kind of weathered the storm of, anything that they were trying to do. I don't think we ever looked too uncomfortable or anything like that. And I think, points very much deserved for both of them. Not the greatest of spectacles, but, sometimes you have them and, it could be a crucial point coming the end of the season and hopefully making the kind of the rest of the season a wee bit more smoother as well.
Yeah, well, it's a point on the road, a good point in a regard against one of their closest rivals, which obviously keeps that gap at 13 points. So hopefully they can take the positives from that performance and get back to winning ways next week.
Or Tuesday even, because we've got Dryborough and a warm-up, which will hopefully, Euan, this thaws the pitch out as well. Indicator that the game on Wednesday could go on as well. So the women ones goes on, maybe that'll be enough kind of coverage and stuff like that. And then it opens a way for us to finally get that game against Dundee United played as well.
Well, you can tell I double-checked the dates on the game. I saw the fixture and just assumed it was next Sunday. So good job, you kept us right there, Angus. So anyone who's listening to the podcast, ignore me. Game's on Tuesday night. So if you're willing to bear the cold, get down and support the girls. I'm sure they'd very much appreciate it. And delighted to welcome the main man behind DUFC Stats, Andy Winton, onto Talk Livi. Andy, how you doing, mate?
Very well, thanks for having me on, Euan.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on. Now, safe to say Dundee United season's been interesting, would probably be the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe from an outsider. I think we could use a lot worse words than that as a United fan. A disaster would probably be a fair word. Yeah, I mean, it's been really, really bad. I mean, last season we were fourth, but the reality is there was absolutely nothing between the teams in fourth and 10th, as you'll know from experience, because you were a last-minute goal away from staying in the top six, and then it was effectively 2 out of 3 got into Europe out of Ross County, Motherwell and United, but essentially there was nothing between the teams in fourth and 10th, so fourth was a bit of a false position, so I knew there might be some struggles this season, but we seem to have recruited a decent manager in the summer and some good players, but it's just not happened. It's been a complete unmitigated disaster.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, it all started, first of all, Tam Coates departed in the summer, which I think came as a bit of a surprise, probably, and he was replaced by Jack Ross. What was your initial thoughts with Jack Ross? Because on paper, looked a very solid appointment.
Yeah, totally. I thought it was a good appointment, and I thought some of the players that had been signed in the summer were quite good. It's just there was glaring gaps. There wasn't a central defensive midfielder, albeit Sybil's obviously coming from you guys, but he hadn't been played very much this season until recently. But he's probably one of the few players that's got pass marks for United this season. But I mean, I was happy with the appointment with Ross. I went to the Alkmaar game, the home one. I didn't get out to Holland. I was going to say unfortunately, probably fortunately as it turned out. But I mean, if you'd said to me after the Alkmaar game was as good a performance as we've had in years, I mean, I don't know if you've looked at the Eredivisie, but I mean, they let in a last minute goal to Feyenoord a couple of weeks ago, but were effectively top of the Eredivisie until recently. You know, they've been going real great guns, so it's astonishing that we've ended up in the position we are, considering how good the performance was that night against a real top side. And if you'd said to me 3 weeks later, Jack Ross would be. You guys actually were the start of the downfall, of course, right? Because it was 3 days later.
What can I say?
It just all went from there. Because there was a Livi result, there was then the disaster, obviously, in Alkmaar was the real catalyst for it, and then they had 3 results in a row. They lost kind of 3-0 to Mirren, 4-1 to 3-0 to Mirren, and then the disaster with Celtic, which, you know, I thought was low. We're now coming in to this game on Wednesday, 7 defeats in a row, the first time in kind of 22 years. So a similar low point. So the only thing that gives me a crumb of comfort is, of course, the last time we played you guys, I mean, usually in Scottish football, you don't need to go back kind of 6 months, but, you know, I mean, it's more than 6 months since we last played in that cup game where we came, you know, off the back of Ross being dismissed. Crazy it's been so long that we've not played, but, you know, we were at a real low point then, and we're obviously able to do what we've not been able to do to Livingston in recent years. Because one of my best mates is a big Livy fan, and it's at first I was delighted when you guys came up to the Championship in 2017, but little did I know that you would basically constantly have our number over us for the next kind of 5 years. So it was quite nice to have one kind of exception to that, and getting that kind of League Cup win was quite a nice win. I was there in August, and that will hopefully we can get a similar performance on Wednesday night from a United perspective.
Yeah, as you said, that tenure Jack Ross had obviously culminated in the 9-0 defeat to Celtic. Do you think it was the correct decision, or do you think he was maybe not given enough time in the role, or do you reckon those results alone, you couldn't really recover from it?
Yeah, it's difficult. 9-0. I mean, it sounds silly, but if he'd lost that game to Celtic, I reckon 4-0, maybe 5-0, maybe even 6. I don't think he'd have lost his job. But 9-0 is just such a bad score, and it was the same goal constantly. Celtic were just cutting through United, and it just seemed that it was just a complete disaster, and there was obviously something seriously amiss. Now, I don't know what that was. There was rumours that Mulgrew and Watt didn't like him, and Mulgrew had basically, under a junior coach in Tam Courts, thought he could do his own thing, and then Jack Ross had come in and was like, well, I'll spend half my time down in Sunderland, but when I'm here, I'm doing it my way. And Mulgrew was like, nah. Mulgrew's been dreadful on the pitch anyway this season after quite a good year last year. But I don't know what. I think they had to get rid of Ross, quite frankly. I mean, 9-0 was just... certainly in the moment I wanted for him to be sacked. So if I said that I didn't, that would be a bit of revisionism on my part.
Yeah, it was one of my college lecturers as a Dundee United fan, and I saw him before the League Cup game, which was after Jack Ross had been dismissed. And I remember speaking to him after the game, and his words were, Jack Ross has got to be the angriest man in Scotland right now, because from his point of view, it was quite clear that the players had just down tools for him.
Totally embarrassing, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, that as much as the supporters have directed anger to recently the sporting director, to the manager, to the owners, which is, I've got my own thoughts on that, and we've been very lucky to have a lot of money put in just because it's not been spent wisely. Isn't 100% their fault, albeit maybe partially, but the players deserve a huge amount of blame, to be honest, because I don't know if it's just because the media have said it a lot, or because I've believed it, maybe started to doubt it a bit on Saturday, actually. I thought we had a good group of players, and the position we are in the league is, there's a real anger, and certainly in my opinion, towards the players, because, they've not performed to a suitable level, and I don't think that entirely rests with the managers.
Yeah, and it was former assistant manager Liam Fox, and so Absolutely. We know him very well here on Talk Livi, who was given the job in the end. What was your feelings on that? I was on the Open Goal podcast with yourself, Andy, and you expressed your opinions on that as well.
Yeah, well, that was a good night, that Open Goal night. Ended up Monday night, and ended up having quite a few jars afterwards at the drive. And I quite enjoyed that. But yeah, in terms of, Fox, obviously you guys will know him well as a player. He's meant to have a high kind of coaching pedigree, but his only managerial appointment had been a Cowden Beef, and he'd been sacked with him at the bottom of League Two. It just seemed like, so Tony Ascar basically he got a sports directorship degree and believes in this model of promoting from within. So Tam Courts was promoted from within. That seemed to work okay. Fox, so they went and got Ross, which was against the model, but I think they thought he was a good manager. And then it was this idea of promoting from within again, but this one, didn't work. Fox, to me, he seemed to kind of make rigid substitutions. It was almost like a pre-planned, I will make a substitution in the 75th minute, I will bring Watt on for Fletcher, or I'll swap Doom and Sibbald in the 67th minute. And there was no variation from it at all until the final couple of games where fans were going bananas about the kind of lack of adaptability. And the results were just, there was a couple of spells where the results had been okay, but by and large, and certainly since the middle end of January, it's just been a disaster.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there was a kind of slight upturn in results just after the World Cup break, wasn't there? Yeah. I think you beat Ross County quite comfortably at Tannadice and amongst that. But as you mentioned, I think it's 7 defeats and 8 in the league for United, which saw Liam Fox lose his job, unfortunately. With so much unrest amongst the support, was that just inevitable that Fox was going to depart?
I think if you looked at the Ross County game, the last game, we lost 4-0 up there. The first goal's a total calamity. And he just clearly, he said that he thought we couldn't get back into the game when we went 1-0 down in the 6th minute of the game, which is a bit of a kind of bizarre thing to say. You could tell he had the look of someone that knew the game was up. the sporting director knew the game was up. United made a total mess for January transfer window because we're really light in a number of positions. The goalkeeping position is the obvious one. Our goalkeeper is by far the worst goalkeeper in the league. United are trying to get a goalkeeper apparently called Bill Hamid, who played 8 times for America and was last played for DC United, not since last May, admittedly. So I don't know if the paperwork will be done on that in time, but that's a rumour that he's meant to come in.
Along with the changes at boardroom level, as well as the managerial changes, it's seen Jim Goodwin take the job until at least the end of the season. What's your thoughts on that appointment? He's obviously just come off the back of a pretty tough end to his stint at Aberdeen.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, in some respects, I've got a kind of a good mate that's a Livi fan, a good mate that's a St Mirren fan, and the Livi fan always thinks I think St Mirren are a wee bit overstated, and that Goodwin seems to kind of have like there's this kind of thing where managers leave St Mirren, like Goodwin, like Jack Ross, and seem to go on to or be offered the chance to do better things. Whereas you look at Martindale at Livi, that never happens. But in terms of the position, I with Goodwin coming in, it's difficult. We just need someone that's going to get a reaction and kind of get. It's a short-term project. He's taken his reputation on the line by taking it on a 3-month contract, because he could have waited and probably got maybe a job at a club that paid less money than Dundee United, but maybe a 2-year deal. Whereas he's on a 3-month contract. He's probably on quite a good bonus if he keeps us in the league, by the way, because that's like win-win. So I don't know. 75, 100 grand to keep us in the league would seem like a win-win for the club and the manager. But if he doesn't keep us up, he's trashed his reputation for 3 months' work. Not trashed his reputation, but his reputation is low and his stock will go lower. It's difficult to see where he goes after that. So I admire him for taking on the role. In terms of his first performance via Aberdeen, at the end of with Fox, we were in a tailspin. We were playing dreadfully. We'd lost 6 in a row. And out of that, the only performance I thought that was any good was at Tynecastle. We had a good half of football. We were 1-0 up in Hearts and probably should have been more. Ryan Edwards got sent off in similar circumstances to the way Hope got sent off for you guys at Easter. I just don't understand how that's a red card. I may be biased, but kicks the ball and there's a slight follow through, like slight grazes the player. It just seemed utterly bizarre to me. I mean, your foot doesn't stop when you kick. But anyway, that aside, United have been dreadful. Whereas against Aberdeen on Saturday, we were really good. And that made me more depressed in a way, because I was like a part of me was thinking, if we start playing well, we get the players playing well, and maybe we'll start winning again. But there's something quite demoralising about playing really well and still losing the game, because it makes you think, oh my God, that's proper relegation stuff. Because United should have been up at halftime against Aberdeen. They controlled the midfield. Stephen Fletcher had a couple of clear-cut chances, and although he's kind of similar bulky presence to Newbley, who I saw scored a cracking goal for you guys at the weekend, Fletcher really has missed a number of chances for us. He'll win it 9 times out of 10 if you put it up to him in the air, and is good at ragdoll defenders, but he's missed a number of chances. And then at the back, we've just got an absolute disaster where we keep gifting goals. The current guy, it wasn't the goalkeeper at the weekend, it was a guy called Ryan Edwards who scored the own goal when you guys won about a year ago against us in that midweek game. Yeah. And actually, the first couple of seasons, I know he scored that own goal last season, Ryan Edwards has been pretty good at United, but he's been absolutely awful this season, and a big reason why we're at the bottom of the league. It's a total change from being one of our best players the last couple of years to, totally dreadful and chucked. I don't know if he thinks he's going to a new club in the summer. I was speaking to my mate that's a big Livi fan, and he reckons it because Fitzwater's obviously suspended for the game on Wednesday after his red card, and we want, he thought that usually would be good for United because he might have troubled Stephen Fletcher a wee bit and got involved in a bit of a tussle. But my mate actually reckons that Fitzwater, similar maybe to Edwards, has his eye on next season, and he doesn't think that his form has been so good for you guys in the last few kind of weeks either. He's maybe eyeing up a kind of move in the summer.
It was certainly a talking point we had, because Davy Martindale's very vocal in the press and very honest, and he talked about players potentially moving on in the summer, and Fitzwater's quite clearly going to move on. But we used Fitzwater as an example of a player that we don't think is really down tools. He had a very good performance, I thought, at Pittodrie last week. The red card, I think he's very unlucky.
Yeah, he's really unlucky for the red card. Yeah, it's really unlucky.
It's not an intentional foul, so he could miss out. But he's probably the type of player that Dundee United, if they were to stay up, certainly should be looking at. He'd comfortably increase his wages, and he'd be playing at a bigger club with probably more eyes on him to step up the levels once again. But heading into the game itself, as you said, there was a much improved performance against Aberdeen despite the result. What do you think we can expect from United on Wednesday night in terms of maybe shape, personnel that might feature?
So I think it'll be similar to the team that played Aberdeen, except what they might do is they might play this guy called Sadat Anaku, who's a Ugandan guy. He's only started one game for us. It kind of came off the bench against Aberdeen and won the penalty at the weekend. The Aberdeen defender, I think it was Mackenzie, lunges into a ridiculous kind of tackle. Anaku's got pace, but he's very raw. He's got absolutely nothing else. And it's one of those things that sometimes pace can be enough, because it puts fear in defenders, even if your first touch is really clunky or whatever. If someone's running at you with pace, it can cause just a bit of a distraction, and we felt that playing off Fletcher, Goodwin actually said that had given him something to think about ahead of Wednesday. So I think the expectation is he might start, which would be, I suppose, a man running off. At the back, we play a back three, which worked in the cup game against you guys earlier in the season, but kind of that's been one of the exceptions because Mulgrew and Edwards can't play in a back three. They need to be the anchor of the three. So I suspect we'll not play Ryan Edwards as right centre back. He had, he was at fault for all 3 Aberdeen goals at the weekend, in my opinion, and that was just so frustrating because if we'd taken even a point, when we equalised, I thought, there's a chance here maybe to go in and get all 3 points, but that point would have given us a chance to get off the bottom of the league with a win against you guys, whereas we're still 4 adrift. And I always feel when you're more than 3 points, it's kind of, you need 2 weeks of good results to happen, so that's concerning. But so I suspect Ryan Edwards might go out, and they might put someone like Liam Smith, who's also been dreadful, that's the problem, in at right centre back. And in the middle of the park, again, I was speaking to my good mate, the Livi fan. He reckons your midfield's been a bit devoid of spark the kind of last 4 weeks because although you've had your kind of 4 defeats, take Rangers, Aberdeen, and Hibs, might not be that surprised that you'd have lost those games in isolation, albeit you wouldn't have wanted to. But it was the manner of the defeats combined with the Cali one, he said, has got him concerned. Albeit you guys obviously have a very kind fixture list running into the split, not least because you get to play Dundee United twice, which a bit of a bonus for you. But I think St Mirren's only top 6 team you play. We similarly have an okay running to the split. We have to play Rangers away, but that aside, our running is not too bad if we can get over the kind of Livingston hoodoo that you've had over us, certainly in the league over the kind of last few years. But I would expect maybe Anaku to come in. I'd expect maybe Edwards to drop out. And then if we can get a goalkeeper, and that would be brilliant because Birighitti is so bad. So I mean, I would expect to see you try and trouble him with either shots or crosses in the box. But I mean, if United can take their performance from the game against Aberdeen into the Livingston game, I would be delighted because certainly Jamie McGrath, who Goodwin had at St Mirren, was really good. The other night, first time he's been good in a while. Levitt looked a bit better because although Levitt's got a spark in him, he's let a lot of games bypass him, but you just can't take him off because he's capable of something game changing. So you kind of have to keep him on. And Aziz Spiek, our kind of left centre back, was kind of pushing up high, and we had a guy called Kieran Freeman at right wing back in. So I mean, the performance against Aberdeen was real. In some respects, we beat Aberdeen 4-0 early in the season, and this is going to sound stupid. We played worse in the 4-0 win than we did the 3-1 defeat because we were totally jammy to win that game 4-0 with 2 goals in a stroke of half time when Aberdeen should have been ahead, and then Aberdeen basically gifted us a stupid penalty, which Sibbald actually won with a good wee run forward and a bomb scare own goal. Whereas for 80 minutes, certainly the game the other night, certainly the first half for sure, United were by far the better side, and but Aberdeen did a job on them. And it was really frustrating. It made me think, God, this team, if they're playing well and losing, then I don't know what to do. But I'm looking forward to the game. I'm going on Wednesday. I might actually sit in the Livi end with my pal because otherwise I'll be in my Todd in the United end. So I might have to, if you see someone kind of jumping up and then sitting on his hands, that might be me. But I'm looking, it's a huge game for both clubs, right? Because you guys need to address the turnaround in form to get, it looks to me like there's 7 spots, or there's 7 teams going for 6 spots in the top 6. And then once you get over that line in the top 6, 5 of them get into Europe. So it's a real attractive opportunity for you guys to finally maybe, kind of get that again, which would just be an incredible achievement. And then similarly for us, games are running out. We've got 11 games left. We need to pick up points. And so, any kind of result we can get, even a draw to get it back to within 3. And I suppose just to end that run of 7 defeats in a row, right now a draw, I might just about take that.
Going on what you said there, my next question seems a bit daft, but where do you think Livi can cause Dundee United problems?
The goalkeeping situation. We have the worst goalkeeper in the league. So if Birighitti is in goals, then, crosses. I mean, he's, as someone said he conceded all types of goals. Stevie May tackled him to put it in. He concedes long range shots. He flaps at crosses. So, I mean, he's got the whole range of weaknesses. So he's just a dreadful goalkeeper.
Do you think the goalkeeper situation at Dundee United almost puts that fear
Yeah, 100%.
the
I
guys
think
in
that's
front
where the
of them,
problem.
because I always say if you've got a competent goalkeeper behind you, it makes your defence relax that little bit more.
I felt that, and because this is going to sound stupid, but when we lost 7-0 away in Alkmaar, we actually played really well the first half hour, but we just let in the only 2 shots on target. And then Birighitti comes out for the third one, a corner, just completely misses it and drops at the guy's feet, and it gets put in. And then the guys are looking around like, who is this goalkeeper? And we're 5-0 down by half time. And it's like, how are we 5-0 down here? We've not actually played that bad comparatively to other performances. But the goalkeeping, I totally agree with you. Like, if you've got the team last season that finished 4th, part of that was because we had Benji Siegrist, a real solid goalkeeper in there. And that makes such a difference when you've got a solid goalkeeper. And that combined with the fact that Mulgrew and Edwards, who were good for us last season, because we started off not conceding many goals, have been really poor this season, both of them. I think Charlie's probably it's time to retire from Mulgrew, and Edwards just looks a shadow of the player he was. I don't know why the turnaround in form. So that's a real area where I think Livingston can get some joy. Hopefully the midfield, if you guys are a bit devoid of spark, it looks like our spark might be coming back. So I'm hoping we can get a bit of joy there. But the other issue we have is we just can't score goals at the moment. It's not good. It's not a good combination, right? We've scored 3 goals in the last 7, and Fletcher, although his kind of hold up play, I think he's a good player. He needs something around him, and I think having let Watt go, which I still don't understand, or having not brought someone in, I don't understand. I think they're going to try this guy Anaku up front, who, if he does play and you see him, it's just all pace running at you, but not much end product. But sometimes that can be enough to cause a bit of a panic. I don't know if is it a back 3 that you guys play?
Back 4 typically, but we are potentially without. Well, Fitzwater suspended. Io Obalai came off at the weekend.
Yeah, I saw the injured. Yeah,
I don't know the extent.
Omiyonga as well, was he?
Omiyonga came off again. Don't know the extent of it. Sean Kelly wasn't on the bench at the weekend, so we've gone from talking about on the podcast how we've got everyone back available to now looking at the game on Wednesday, going, who do we actually start? So I think our centre half pairing's going to almost pick itself, which is the boy DeLucas who came in January, and Morgan Boys. So I think that'll, as I say, the centre half pairing almost picks itself for Wednesday night for us.
The impressive thing about Livingston for me is that and Martindale's touching it, is the squad you've put together, because that's a long injury list, right? And you've still got kind of options there. Whereas the difficulty Fox had, and even Goodwin at the weekend when we went 1-0 down to Aberdeen, you look at the bench and you think, who are we going to bring on here? Because United, I don't know how they've assembled such an expensively assembled squad and have no options to change the game, because we have one striker and you know the other options are just not appealing. So part of the reason we maybe didn't make substitutes is that we just don't have the options off the bench to change the game. Whereas I look on it, you know, and envy at the squad that Livy have put together, and the options you seem to have in each position, you know, to kind of swap in is great.
It's nice to see folk envious of us. but Andy, what are you going prediction-wise then?
You never like predicting a defeat, and I certainly don't want it to be 8 in a row. I will go 1-1.
1-1. And that would stop that run of results.
Stop that run of defeats, and then we can hopefully go and beat St Mirren the next game at Tynecastle at Tannadice and try and kind of pull away. As long as we can stay within touching distance, i.e. within 3 points, I think, you know, we might have a chance. But goodness knows, it needs to turn around quickly, and it's really frustrating. But I'm aware it's a really big game for Livingston as well. Just that opportunity, stopping the rot from you guys. So both teams looking to stop the rot, and that opportunity to kind of make the most of a favourable run into the split to get yourself on the right side of the split line this season. I expect you're really determined for after last year. So
yeah, exactly. Now you're on the DUFC stats account on Twitter. Just give us a wee bit of background and where folk can find you on Twitter as well. Yeah,
it's just at DUFC stats. So I just post out just some. I'm a bit of a stato, so just any kind of stats that kind of come my way. I just post them out. So last time I was able to, my mate as a Livy fan was like, you weren't even at the car, and you tweeted it was United's first win at the Tony Mac since 2005, because we've had a record there. So just noticing wee trends and results and posting them up is generally what I do. So I quite enjoy doing that and just engaging. There's a lot of good content out there for a lot of sides at the moment, which is great to see.
Well, Andy, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I mean this in the nicest possible way. I hope you have a miserable Wednesday night if the game goes ahead.
I might see you in the home end if you see someone jump up or someone leaving early. If you guys are winning, you'll know who it is.
But thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and best of luck for the rest of the season as well.
Appreciate it. Cheers, mate.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in, week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, so search Talk Livi to find us and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com. You'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
Before we finish the episode off, though, we were both incredibly saddened to hear of the passing of former club chairman Bill Hunter. Bill was chairman of both Meadowbank Thistle and Livingston, and he made the initial difficult decision to relocate the football club to West Lothian when the club had hit financial difficulties. Despite strong opposition from supporters of Meadowbank Thistle, the decision was made and Livingston FC were born.
Quite simply, without Bill having the vision to take senior football to West Lothian, there wouldn't be a Livingston FC. Since seeing the sad news, there have been numerous posts from supporters, and it's clear to see the passion that Bill had for the football club and its fans, and always had the club's best interests at heart.
I only met Bill on one occasion in the stadium bar before our playoff game with Partick Thistle a few years back, and he sat and chatted with our table of guys who normally go to the games, and you could clearly see that the passion was still there for the football club, and he still had those best interests at heart as he talked about previous regimes, always asking for his advice, and he was a fantastic character. To say I got to spend even just an hour in his company was something I'll cherish. But our condolences go out to Bill's family at this extremely difficult time, and rest in peace, Bill. That is it for this week's episode. Thanks to all the listeners for tuning in, and hopefully it's a slightly better week following the Lothian's finest football team.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Ammonvale. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Ammonville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston,